everybody. You won't forget to ring me tomorrow at the dining room table when the Court of Public Opinion becomes a 3-hour live streaming radio show. JeremyCordeaux.com. And the phone number to ring us on is 0491 65 68 60. But I'll remind you of that if you tune in. It's easy to do, JeremyCordeaux.com, and we will be there. I was going to say how nice that piece of whatever it was you put in at the end of the show yesterday, but of course I haven't seen it yet.
No.
Sort of like time traveling. Anyway, we'll talk about that on Friday as well. Or maybe play it again. It is a song, is it?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right. Anti-Semitic rallies in Adelaide last Sunday. I didn't mention them to you before now. Probably should have. It's about pro-Palestine and Arab protesters demonstrating against the war in Gaza. Fine. Look, we all deplore war and the consequences of war, particularly this war. See, the Israelis run the risk of a tactical victory over Hamas, but a strategic loss in the court of public opinion. But the thing I want to say to all of those protesters, if they were right here now, I would say it. Hamas started it. They started it. Don't poke the bear. Did they not think there would be dire consequences for their attack on Israel? When you think of unprovoked attacks, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941 comes to mind. 2,400 people killed. This resulted in a fierce, unrelenting, determined war, which showed no mercy and concluded only with the dropping of 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Hundreds of thousands of men, women and children, civilians, were killed. The lesson for the Japanese: don't start something that you can't finish. And the same thing applies to Hamas. Anyway, hospital ramping is out of control, continues to be out of control. February was a record month for ramping. Isn't it amazing? Such an issue at the last election. A total failure by the present government to rectify the problem as promised, yet nothing. No media condemnation. There are reports, but no outrage or questions, pointed questions being asked. No problems with the ambulance union. Just amazing. One of our great sponsors is Jim Elder from Elder's Fine Art Gallery. Let me just remind you again, he's on the lookout for pictures for his fabulous auctions. He has 3 a year. Elder's Fine Art Gallery in Melbourne Street, North Adelaide. He's calling for entries in the forthcoming March-April auction. Australian and international paintings. Jim will organise a no-obligation appraisal. He's looking for noted Australian and international artists. You see, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't know. A painting on the wall is a painting I look at and admire, or I don't. But they are of incredible importance, worth sometimes thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, having got your appraisal, you might think, well, I'm going to move this thing into pride of place, a prominent place, or, of course, the option is there to sell it. No harm finding out. Jim and Helen Elder, their beautiful art gallery is at 106 Melbourne Street, North Adelaide. They're open Monday to Friday, 10 till 5. All you need to do is call Jim on 8267 2869. I hate it when people rattle off phone numbers like you'd never get it down. 8267-2869, or Jim's mobile phone is 0417 811184. And don't forget that Hans Hyson that sold for nearly $30,000 in the December sale. Somebody got a happy surprise. The government wants to organise a deer cull. A deer cull. I'm totally against these things. You know how I feel about the Brumbies, and Pete would feel exactly the same way.
Yes.
And the koalas. Good Lord, I just don't know. Humankind, we're a strange lot. Anyway, I think it requires public opinion to be heard loud and clear on issues like this. Because culling these wonderful, majestic creatures, they're not culling them, they're killing them. These majestic animals, they do it for, in my opinion, no good reason. They can't convince me there's a good reason.
Can I just add that in my opinion, the greatest plague on the planet is the human species. We are out of control, destroying every other living thing to accommodate our expanding population. It's out of control.
We'll kill anything that gets in our way. We'll even kill our own kind.
Yes.
Ah, dear, oh dear. We were talking with Frances Nelson KC on last Friday, at the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com. She's the chair of the parole board, in fact has been for the last 40 years. And the problem of child offenders came up. It is getting worse and worse. It really is. Monday, we heard that in Melbourne, a 13-year-old boy had been arrested for an attack, a sexual assault, carried out on a woman jogger in the Parklands. It's alleged that he tried to rip her clothes off. This is in broad daylight. Terrifying the woman, of course. 13 years old, ladies and gentlemen. Now, as we were discussing on Friday, they want to lift the age of criminal responsibility to 14. Now, Frances Nelson's quite against it. I am too. So what that means, though, that you don't become responsible or punishable till you're 14. So rape, murder, whatever crime is committed by people under the age of 14 would go unpunished. Can't do anything. Nothing. And wouldn't that kind of attract people or tempt people to do things they might not otherwise do, knowing there was no punishment? And as Frances said, she is dealing with children as young as 8. As young as 8 who have committed serious crime. We, of course, are dealing with the effect. We've got to go to the cause. I personally think that we are desensitizing children. Violent video games and television programs, movies, even some aspects of sport and entertainment. We are failing with discipline and moral guidance. Long-time principal in 3 states of Australia, Mr. Robert Huff, he says parents increasingly don't teach kids values and respect for the law. This guy's been a teacher for 50 years. Schools have changed a lot in the last 50 years, he said. I would say not much for the better. Robert Hoff has seen it all, and he says that there is an alarming trend appearing with parents. I would say it's not only appearing, it's in living colour. This award-winning principle says there has been a growing lack of respect for teachers, authority, parents, and education for years. And society expect the schools to try and teach the values that they should have taught them in the first place, at home. Now, I don't know really too much about Robert Hoff, but I'm trying to get him on the show tomorrow. I think he would be a very interesting guest on the subject. Speaking of schools, when my son was placed in a class to learn Chinese, he wasn't very good at it. It's a very difficult language to learn, but he persevered a little bit. Eventually, he dropped out. This is the funny bit. Even though he had dropped out, he got a B. Even though he hadn't been to a single class for 18 months. On his final report, his report said, Christopher is an active participant in class. I wonder where teachers get these phrases that they use, almost cliches. Anyway, he was never in class. I don't get it. And then there is the certificate that he showed me. He did a TAFE course, because he's 22 now, getting on for 23. He did a TAFE course, or didn't do a TAFE course. I have his statement of attainment. His achievement in media and the screen, which is what he wants to do. Things like modelling techniques, work in the creative arts and industry, health and safety practices, digital image and creative design, critical thinking in the team environment, whatever the hell that is. The certificate, he should frame it, because he never completed the course. Never completed the course. What in God's name is going on in education? Apart from their obsession with woke and inclusive political correctness, no discipline, it would seem no education either. I don't know, I think you'd have to shake up the entire department, wouldn't you? Something's wrong. Anthony Albanese, speaking just ahead of the Dunkley by-election, said, Australians are earning more money, and with these new tax cuts, you will keep more of it. That, of course, is a lie. After inflation, mostly caused by Labor's ridiculously high electricity prices and the accelerating cost of living, then there's the removal of the low to middle income tax offset, worth $1,500 to most everyone, and the relentless quarterly excise increases on the cost price of alcohol, tobacco and petrol. That worker, referred to by the Prime Minister, is demonstrably worse off. Tax cuts or no tax cuts. And just because Labor talks about the cost of living endlessly, it doesn't mean their policies aren't responsible for the problem. I see, and this is worrying, well, more worrying for the New Zealanders than people in Australia, but I see Warner Brothers, who owns Channel 3 in New Zealand, which there, apart from the national broadcaster, is the only other source of news and information on television. They've decided to close it down. Close it down. Sack the entire newsroom. 300 to 400 people have lost their jobs. It begs the question, if you are a media operator, do you have more responsibility than just making money for your shareholders? That license is a very grave responsibility and obligation. It goes along with what I said about 2 weeks ago, that Paramount, who own the 10 network here in Australia, will either close it down or sell it. Or, of course, here's an idea, they might just hire some people who know what they're doing. I think that could be a great idea. Oh yes, before I go, I do want to bring this up again. This gender equality report, we were talking about it the other day, the gender equality report. These people who go around and see how inclusive you are in your business or company. In my stupid way, I thought it was about equal pay for equal work. Well, it wasn't. No way. It was about how many men were making more money than women in the same company, not necessarily doing the same job. And listening to 7:30, bullying the head of one company, 2A Milk, I think it was. I think if I'd have been that guy, I'd have just told the young lady to shove it and walk off. Anyway, the truth is, when you employ people, and I've had the great pleasure and great good fortune to employ many wonderful, wonderful people. I have, and I always would employ the best person for the job. It's got nothing to do with what's between someone's legs. It's all to do with what's between someone's ears. You simply can't employ people because they are a man or a woman. That's nuts. Now, I don't care what gender imbalance you might perceive or try to fix. You start employing anyone on the basis other than merit, I firmly believe you'll go broke. You can talk to me on Friday, tomorrow, if you want to talk to me about that. Have I got another second or two? A new snapshot of the drugs we take. Smoking continues to be in decline. Well, I guess it is a dying habit, literally and figuratively. We're vaping more. Women are drinking more. Marijuana is the most popular drug. Cocaine is growing in popularity. And drug use is generally showing no signs of slowing. And for the first time, women are taking as many illicit drugs as men. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Red wine is about my only vice. I used to smoke a pipe and enjoy that, but don't put anything in your lungs other than air. That's what they were made for. 0491 65 68 60, the number to ring tomorrow, 9 to 12, jeremycordeaux.com. March 7, today, we got a Thursday. Australia's Helen Reddy, her album I Am Woman, certified gold in the United States of America on this day in 1973. Ivan Lendl, tennis player, born in Czechoslovakia. He won every major tennis event in the world except Wimbledon. In 1992, he became a US citizen. On this day, he was born 1960. This is a weird one. 1989, on this day, a convicted US murderer who successfully appealed against being sent to the electric chair was electrocuted accidentally while sitting on the toilet trying to mend a pair of headphones. Well, you see, God moves in mysterious ways. The wonderful Cliff Richard was performing at the Apollo Stadium on this day in '83. He would have come by the studio and we'd have had a good old talk. Lovely man, Cliff Richard, Sir Cliff Richard. At the age of 37, Phyllis Diller made her debut as a comedienne. You don't hear women comedians being called comedians very much these days. Comedienne at the Purple Onion nightclub in San Francisco, 1955. She's a funny lady, Phyllis Diller. Former leading Australian physician, great Australian, Sir Lorimer Dodds, was born, 1900 was the year. Most illustrious man. 1953, Don Dunstan was elected the member for Norwood in South Australia. The Pentagon Papers were first mentioned That was 53, Don Dunstan was elected, 53. The Pentagon Papers were first mentioned in a US newspaper, front page story in the Boston Globe, this day in 1971. Yeah, Daniel, golly, I can't think of his name, whistleblower, Daniel Ellsberg, yes. The secretary of Gertrude Stein, Alice B. Toklas, died, 1967. A rose is a rose is a rose is a rose. Anthony Armstrong Jones, Earl of Snowdon, was born, married Princess Margaret in 1960. He was a photographer and design consultant for the Times and the Sunday Times. This day in 1930 he was born. America's most famous weatherman, Willard Scott, Jr., was born on this day in 1934. Sir Robert George retired as Governor of South Australia, 1960. The first jazz record was released in America, Dixieland One Step, 1917 that was. 1804, the first Bible Society was founded. Scottish inventor Alexander Graham Bell was granted a patent for his telephone on this day in 1876. And one more, the first successful radio telephone call between New York and London on this day in 1926. We will leave it there. Have you got a song to do?
Well, I thought I could put on that new one I've just done on my own.
Oh, please do. Yes.
I've just finished it off today, so...
We'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Love to hear it, love to see it.
All
Have
right.
you got vision as well?
Yes.
Oh, good. Right, okay.
I'll put that on.
And if you're looking through things, there was a fabulous song I do remember fondly called Rose of My Heart. I know Johnny Cash did a version very late in his life. In fact, I think it was the last record he made before he died. And you could hear his voice had gone, and he was more talking it than anything else. I can't remember who had the, hit version of it, but Rose of My Heart, lovely song. There are so many lovely songs. I'll try and find that, dig that out and play it. I'd have at least a grab to play for you tomorrow morning. Hope to see you then. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton and I will be back. Believe in yourself. This has been the Court of Public Opinion.
It's a long way back home. It's a long way back from here. I've got to make it on my own, but I know my sweet love's waiting there. I'm gonna hold her in my arms. I'm gonna feel her all around me, and love her like there's no tomorrow. Her love is all I need. It's a long way back to love, from the place where I've been hiding, looking at the night sky up above. I know the sun will soon be rising. I'm gonna hold her in my arms. I'm gonna feel her all around me, and love her like there's no tomorrow. Her love is all I need. Running out of money, luck and time, but you know I'd beg, steal or borrow. I've got one thing on my mind, I'll be in her loving arms tomorrow. I'm gonna hold her in my arms. I'm gonna feel her all around me, and love her like there's no tomorrow. Her love is all I need. Her love is all I need.